Hello and welcome to the Post to Post podcast. It is podcast number 37. Today is February 25th. It is Sunday. My name's Neil. You're Brent. We're here to talk about some hockey. We just filmed about 5 minutes of the podcast, but apparently the audio was not recording, so we got to do a little bit of a redo here. And the first time we filmed this, I talked about how we just filmed 3 videos on 3 important trades: the Volcanic trade, the Nash trade, and also the Brassard trade. A very complicated one. You've already seen those videos, hopefully, because this podcast will release after all 3 of those. We've got lots to talk about today. Some trades, a little bit, some Olympics, some soccer at the end, and just all kinds of stuff. It's been an absolutely crazy busy weekend, but it's been an exciting weekend. So if you look on the trade block, on my list I've got McDonough, Carlson, Vanek, Maroon, Kane, Galchenyuk, Domi, Green, Pacioretty, JVR, Leonard, Yarmulson, Barry, Hoffman, Georges, and Falk. So if you're a fan of any of those teams with those players, you can expect maybe some chatter today, tonight, and tomorrow on potential trades for those guys. Streaks. Let me hit you with some streaks.
Okay.
Philly, 5 games in a row.
Philadelphia.
Quietly. Toronto 4, Tampa Bay 3, Nashville 3, Minnesota 3. Tampa Bay back to their winning ways after a bit of a, not really a struggle, but just a slow period, I guess. On the other side of the coin, the Rangers are on a 6-game losing streak. Not a surprise there. They're kind of burning it down. And St. Louis, 3 games. They're really struggling as of late, just clinging on to that last spot, basically, as you mentioned the first time we filmed this.
They are. They're the last wild card team as we speak. They're actually tied in points with Dallas, and the tiebreaker just goes to Dallas incrementally. So Dallas and St. Louis are both there. But right behind them, only 2 points back, is Anaheim. 3 points back is the Kings, and 4 points back is Colorado. So it's far from certain who's going to be in the playoffs in the West. It's really tight. It's really, really tight.
So another thing that happened during the first time that we filmed this podcast 10 minutes ago, there was 2 things announced on Twitter that we didn't have time to discuss in any of the videos earlier. So we decided to discuss them, and we'll discuss them again a little bit. So although the conversation will be genuine, we're basically going to say the same thing. So there's 2 trades that happened. It's not trades. 1 trade that happened, 1 signing. Gionta signed with Boston for a very reasonable $700,000.
Yeah. He had a great performance for Team USA as its captain in the Olympic Games, and that propelled him to some strong consideration in the NHL, and Boston's picked him up. I think it's a great deal for both of them.
Yeah, I think so as well. He's going to be a great addition in the playoffs. He's got a ton of experience, so that's going to be really great. And then the second thing that happened was the 3-way trade that happened between Columbus, the Predators, and the Oilers. So Columbus acquired Letestu, the Predators acquired a 4th-round pick, and the Oilers acquired Pontus Aberg. It's a pretty interesting name, by the way.
That's
Pontus.
Pontus. Now, I know in some languages that derive from Latin that would have something to do with a bridge.
Oh,
Pontus, like a pont. A pont is a bridge. So I don't know if that.
He was named after a bridge?
Well, I don't know, or maybe I just don't know. I don't want to say anything. If I stopped saying things I didn't know anything about, I wouldn't speak at all. But that's a very interesting name. Pontus. Another one is Humpus.
Humpus Lindholm.
Or no, Hampus.
Hampus Lindholm.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, not Humpus. So anyways, with that being said, we will be checking our phones and our Twitter feeds vigorously and frequently over this podcast to discuss anything that pops up during the time, although by the time you hear this, it will be old news to you. So I've talked about the streaks, I've talked about the trades that just happened. You got anything? What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about an interesting football or soccer game that happened today. You already teed that up, that we're going to talk about that near the end of the podcast.
Yeah, we'll do that near the end.
I'm looking forward to telling the little bit of the story there of that. You might be able to guess, if you're watching this on video, that I plan to talk about Manchester United's game today against Chelsea. So
yeah, if you're just listening to this, we're in some interesting attire. I don't think we've ever worn so much red. I've got my Canadiens jersey on, my Canadiens hat, which I guess is technically black, but you've got your...
I have my Manchester United home jersey on, and my Montreal Canadiens red hat on as well, and I have a Man United scarf that we kindly were sent by one of our correspondents in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, so we're bleeding lots of red here today.
Yeah. And you've got an Orlando Solar Bears
yes.
scarf on your microphone as well. So.
A little orange. You could, if you squint hard enough, it might look like red. It's close. So yeah, we're going to talk some soccer at the end of the podcast. We're going to talk some Olympics because that's really important.
It is.
I'm sure you have some other stuff. Maybe you want to go over some standings or stuff like that.
I do.
Can you hit me with those first, if you don't mind?
Sure. Okay. In the standings, we have the Tampa Bay Lightning now sitting atop all of the teams in the East, or with combined Atlantic and Metropolitan divisions. They have 87 points. They almost have enough points now to basically go to sleep for the rest of the season and almost still make the playoffs. They are a plus 25 in my strange plus-minus system.
Oh, yeah.
That actually ties them with the Vegas Golden Knights in the West, who have 86 points, but one fewer game played, so they're also plus 25. So those two are the class of the field right now.
It's funny because your system, it's a really good system mid-season. It's a terrible system at the beginning of the season. It's a terrible system at the end of the season. It's a mid-season system that works really well, and then the further the season goes on, the worse it kind of gets.
Well, even right now, though, like last night, Toronto defeated Boston by I forget the score. It was like 4-3 or something, and Toronto beat Boston and went past them in the standings by 1 point. The Leafs have 83 points. The Bruins have 82. And if you just looked at points, you'd say, oh my goodness, the Toronto Maple Leafs are on their way. But Boston now holds 5 games in hand on Toronto. So my plus-minus system, Toronto has plus 19, Boston's a plus 23. That's the real standings, folks, because in the next 5 games, Boston plays Buffalo, Montreal, Detroit, Carolina, and Pittsburgh. They're going to win at least one of those 5 games, come on,
right.
And probably at least 3 of them.
How many games in hand does Boston have on Tampa?
3 games. Tampa's played 62, Boston's played 59. So Boston is 5 points behind Tampa with 3 games in hand. If they won them all, they'd be a point ahead.
Very interesting.
Very interesting. So Boston is climbing, and it still looks like a Toronto-Boston first round. With
the additions that they've made in Nash and Gionta, and the potential loss of Bergeron, he walked out of the game last night with a boot on. So I don't know. I still think that I wouldn't want to play. Honestly, I wouldn't want to play Boston in the playoffs this year.
No, I wouldn't. No way. Right now, Tampa would cross over and play the Columbus Blue Jackets, which would be the lowest seeded wild card right now from the Metro Division. Washington would play the New Jersey Devils, which is the higher seeded wild card.
And those change every day, just like in the West.
They change every day. And Pittsburgh and Philadelphia would play each other. That is starting to solidify a bit, so it looks like that matchup may happen.
Really?
Yeah.
Because yesterday Pittsburgh was ahead of Washington, I think.
Yeah, but not now. And Washington not only has 1 more point than Pittsburgh, but they still have a game in hand as well. So
it's going to be tight.
It's going to be tight. In the Pacific, the Vegas Golden Knights are number 1, and they're number 1 even if you compare them to the Central. So in the whole West, they're number 1. They would play the lowest seeded wild card right now, and that's the St. Louis Blues, barely. Dallas is right there with them in the wild card spot. Dallas would play Nashville, and Winnipeg and Minnesota would play. That would be a great rivalry just across the border.
Absolutely.
There. And San Jose would play Calgary, because Calgary is just into the 3rd seed in the Pacific. And they're actually tied in points with Anaheim. They're tied almost all the way across. The Calgary beats Anaheim in a bit of an incremental tiebreaker. So Anaheim and Calgary are virtually tied. So it might be an Anaheim-San Jose first round if Calgary drops.
There's always a California matchup, it seems, in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Whoever Vegas plays in the first round, because Vegas is going to make the playoffs. If they miss the playoffs, then that's going to be the craziest thing that has ever happened in sports, and I think. If they play, I don't know, say St. Louis. That's who they're matched up to play right now, right? If they play St. Louis, if St. Louis loses, do you think St. Louis should be embarrassed to lose to Vegas, an expansion team? Or do you think they shouldn't be embarrassed because of the way that Vegas played this year?
I think it's the second one. I think an expansion team counts for the first 20 or 30 games, and once you've washed that stink off of you of being an expansion team, if you're still performing, as Vegas is, forget the fact that they're an expansion team. It's a new day, and I think any team would have to take them seriously playing them, and I don't think any team should be embarrassed to lose to them just because they're an expansion team. Gerard Gallant has put together the chemical reactions needed for 4 lines and 3D, and it's working. I don't know how it's working, but it is, and it's real. And I don't know how far they can go.
It's pretty crazy. It kind of feels like Germany in the Olympics a little bit. And we'll talk about that.
Nice segue.
Later. Yes. Thank you. But yeah, Vegas is really doing pretty good right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good. Really good. So that's where things would stand. I know we don't use the podcast a whole lot these days to talk about last night's games because so much happened. But there were a couple of cool things that happened last night. One of them was this freaky goal in the Ottawa-Philly game.
Oh, that was weird.
That was just nuts. Brandon Manning was just doing a dump-in, and it was just above the line of the boards where it meets the glass. Some people would call that the half wall. And it hit a stanchion or something, and Craig Anderson went out to try to meet the puck around behind the net, and the puck bounced off the stanchion and went in off the post and scored. And that was the weirdest thing.
And this isn't the first time we've seen this. It happens like once every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
It's just one of those physics things. It just happens.
And did you see the Edmonton-LA end of game?
Oh, yes, I did.
That was crazy. Edmonton was leading 4-3. LA appeared to score. Mm-hmm. The referee didn't call it a goal at the time, but then the clock went down to 0. Mm-hmm. After that, the referee was called over to the penalty box and handed the iPad, looked at it, and they determined that indeed the puck did cross the line. So the referee went out, made an announcement, pointed to center ice, good goal, that would have tied it 4-4. Then Edmonton threw a coach's challenge on goalie interference, which also succeeded, wiped out the goal. Edmonton ended up winning 4-3.
Do you know that was the first time that Edmonton has won a goal challenge since Todd McClellan has joined the team?
I did not know.
They had lost 19 previous challenges.
I didn't know that.
Something like that. I think I saw that in a tweet.
That's hilarious.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
That's crazy.
What else you got?
A little bit of stat stuff. Just who's looking at the Rocket Richard Trophy.
Oh,
Ovechkin, he's still lighting it up.
He's trying. He's trying real hard.
He's got 38 goals now. Malkin is second with 36. So Ovechkin has got a 2-goal gap there for the Rocket Richard. Good for him. This will be, on one of the sports reports this morning, I think it's like the 13th year in a row where he has scored 32 goals or more in a season. In a row. And he's only 4 goals shy of 600 now.
He does so many important things on the ice, especially on the power play, but he just has this sense of, like, he doesn't need to look at the net before he shoots. Like, he'll be watching the play. He does stand still. I mean, Ovechkin fans, you can't even argue that he doesn't stand still. He just stands in his office and he waits. But it's not like he keeps looking at the net to get his position or to know where the net is so he's ready. He just watches the play, and he doesn't even have to look at the net. And the puck comes, and I don't understand the accuracy that he has without knowing, like, where the net is. He's just that good. It's like he's got a third eye in the side of his head that looks sideways. It's unbelievable.
And this is totally nothing related to what you just said, but they showed a whole bunch of highlights of him scoring this morning as they were talking about his amazing run this year. And I don't recall any of those highlights where he scores the goal and then pulls the mouth guard out and celebrates. Because I don't think he wears a mouth guard. I don't know that he does.
I don't remember.
If he does, I've never seen him pull it out of his mouth. I think maybe if he's that good at getting the puck in the net, maybe he's that good at swallowing his mouth guard or getting it out of the way so he can celebrate immediately. I don't know. I don't think he has one.
Because there's some people who play with mouth guards who chew on them and don't even, like, wear them as mouth guards. Like, I think Patrick Kane, like, will play the game with, like, he'll be coming down the ice on a rush, and his mouth guard will be, like, half out of his mouth. Like, this will be chewing on it.
Yeah, I don't know. And, of course, with mouth guards, people would think that the main purpose of the mouth guard is to protect your teeth. But, in fact, a very important purpose of the mouth guard is to protect against concussions. Because if you get hit hard enough on the chin and you don't have anything cushioning your lower jaw from your upper jaw or from your upper mouth, the force will transmit right through into your cranial cavity and cause your brain to have a concussion. So the mouth guard is very much an anti-concussion device.
Yeah, and the loss of teeth as well. I mean,
that's part of it.
The typical hockey player is,
oh, yeah.
like, You're kind of not a hockey player if you're not missing a tooth. So.
Yeah, if you got all your teeth and you're playing professional hockey, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, exactly. You're not playing hard enough.
Not playing hard.
I don't even mean to be distracted here, but I'm following a few potential rumors on my phone here.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm not going to mention them right now because I don't know how legit they are. But I don't want to do fake news. So, I think it's really hard, like, because I like Washington. I love Ovechkin, but it's really hard to feel good about them because of their history.
Mm-hmm.
Their history, and not only against the Pittsburgh Penguins, but just their inability to not get it done.
Get to the inability to get past the second round, usually. I don't know. I don't know what it is. And it's not... If it was something obvious, they would have solved it. But it's not obvious. It's bad luck, or it's yips.
Yips, yeah. It's a mental thing. I don't really know what it is, but it's a thing, that's for sure. But I don't know the ideal matchup for Washington in the playoffs. I was thinking about this the other day. Do they want to play Pittsburgh in the first round so they don't face them in the second round because of the whole mental thing? Do they want to face Philly in the first round like they did the other year?
I think you're onto something. I think the hardest matchup for them needs to be in the first round.
I think so too.
They need to learn how to crunch that and get it out of the way.
Yeah, I think so too. It would be interesting to see Washington take out Pittsburgh in the first round, take out Philly in the second round, and play Boston in the conference finals. That would be 3 very hard physical series for them. And if they could do that and get to the finals and ended up facing Vegas or Winnipeg or Nashville, I think they'd have a legitimate chance based on what they did taking down Boston. But it's going to be so hard for Washington to come out of the East. I know I predicted them to win the Stanley Cup, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough.
It's going to be really tough. And we saw even last year, I thought when Washington and Toronto drew each other as a matchup, I thought, well, okay, this will maybe go 5 games. And I think it actually ended up going only 6 instead of the full 7, although Toronto did so well early in that series that it was fully competitive all the way through. And I think it gave them a shock, and it might have given them a scare. But whoever they meet in the third round, if Washington gets to the third round, that team will have to have beaten Tampa, Toronto, or those teams will be Tampa or Toronto. So whoever they play will be beaten up pretty good too.
What division do you think has the easiest, is going to have the easiest time? Like, do you think, like if you look at Vegas, they're so far ahead of everyone else in their division.
Yeah.
Do you think it matters who wins that 2 and 3 seed series? Hypothetically, if Vegas wins their first series against that wild card, do you think it matters who, like, do you think they care?
I don't think they do.
I think Vegas has the best chance based on their division to get to the conference finals.
I think there's only one team that Vegas will have lost the season series against based on the games already played. In every other team they've played, I think they've won at least one of the 2 games and more likely both of the games against that other team. And I don't know, there might be 1 or 2 now where the other team has won and maybe tied 1 or overtime lost it.
Yeah, I think there's one team that beat Vegas twice.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's Buffalo or some team
I can't remember who it is.
I don't think it's a team that's competitive. It's just a fluky thing.
Really?
It's Buffalo or Chicago or somebody.
Oh, I thought it was Dallas or someone.
I don't know.
There's probably no easy way of looking that up to find it, eh?
Not an easy way, no. But I can take a look right now at the standings and see who would play who, and what their records are against each other. So that might be fun. But yeah,
maybe it's Nashville. Oh no, it's Edmonton. I just looked it up. It's Edmonton. That's funny.
That is funny.
So
the playoff scenarios right now, as we speak, the Vegas Golden Knights would play Anaheim. The season series is Vegas beating Anaheim 3 games and Anaheim beating Vegas once. And all the games are played.
I said this 3 podcasts ago, and I'll say it again this podcast. Anaheim, you should be scared. Or, sorry, let me reword that. The rest of the league, you should be scared of Anaheim. They are my dark horse coming out of the West. It is my prediction that they will go all the way as the dark horse to the Stanley Cup Finals. That's my prediction, my bold prediction. I have a feeling you disagree.
No, I don't. I don't disagree. I just don't. I'm trying to see how. Again, I'm using ESPN again here.
Oh, you need to change your ways.
Man,
ESPN,
you suck. I'll tell you right now, ESPN, you suck, because the way the standings actually are don't accord with the playoff rules as to who would play who. And if you click on projected playoff matchups based on the current standings, your website is wrong. So go away. You don't show hockey games anyway.
And when you do, it's garbage.
And when you do, they're garbage. So goodbye. I'm going to delete that favorite from my favorites bar in Chrome, and I'm never going back to ESPN again. So they don't even do car racing anymore.
Who do you think Vegas plays then?
I'm positive that right now Vegas would play either Dallas or St. Louis, who are tied for that last wild card, and it's based on a very chintzy tiebreaker. They both have 74 games played, 62 wins.
No, Vegas would play Anaheim.
No.
Yeah. Anaheim has the last wild card spot.
I don't think they do.
They do. I'm looking at it right now.
Well, I know you're looking at it right now, but
on NHL.com. If anyone's going to be right, it's going to be NHL.com.
Okay. And I know why you're looking based on points. I'm looking based on my plus-minus system.
Well, you can't do that for the playoff matchups.
I can, because this is more real.
But then you can't look at your sheet and then complain about ESPN because they don't use your system.
That's true.
That's funny. One thing I'll say is sometimes we have some laughs on here. It made me think of something. I've gotten this said to me a couple times. People will say, I feel like I've known you guys for a long time. Or I feel like I'm friends with you guys.
Right. Because
your conversations are so genuine and not scripted. I feel like I'm friends with you guys, or I've known you guys forever.
We're definitely not scripted.
No, definitely not scripted. And then they'll say, but you guys obviously have known nothing about me. So it's like, there's people out there who feel like they're kind of part of the conversation even though they're not contributing, or they're friends with us or something like that. And it's kind of a weird thing to say, but I completely understand it because that's exactly how I feel about certain YouTubers, like Rhett and Link from Good Mythical Morning when they do their podcasts. Right? Like I feel like I'm kind of there with them and friends with them. Or Ethan on Ethan's podcast.
Oh,
he's just so genuine. He just like, not saying that I'm as genuine as him, but
and if you walked up to, and you're just at a bus stop or in an airport and you saw Ethan and Gila, you would probably want to go over and say, how you doing?
Yeah.
And they're like, who the hell are you? Right? But yeah, I understand it. I used to work in radio back when radio was a thing, and people would recognize me in stores by my voice because no one knew what I looked like, thank God, but they would recognize my voice and ask me, are you the guy in the radio? And I got the same reaction. People would even phone the radio station and make a request for a song. And they'd talk to you as if you were a relative almost.
Yeah.
And they listened to you every night, 5 nights a week. And they did think they knew you. And
it's cool.
It's very cool. And I'm not going to say it's not a power, but it is a responsibility.
Totally.
That you have with the viewer or with the listener to hopefully not disappoint them, and to treat that gift with the respect it deserves, because it is a gift that they give you, and inviting them into your house, into their house, so many times a day or so many times a week. It's a wonderful thing.
Absolutely. And if you guys ever see me out in public or anything like that, come say hi. Don't be afraid.
Well, that happened just the other day. Someone approached you.
Yeah, little kid. Shout out to that kid. Real nice kid. But if you ever see me, come say hi. Just tell me who you are. Just explain yourself. If I don't know anything about you, so just help me out a little bit. Tell me who you are, what your name is, all that stuff.
Yeah, because the young man who came up to you, he didn't actually introduce himself or anything. He just said, "Are you Neil from?"
Yeah, you Neil from Post to Post. Yeah.
And you probably had a quick chat, and then that was it.
Yeah, real nice kid. And I asked him what team he cheered for. I asked him who his favorite player was, maybe. If he played hockey, what position he played, what number he wore, stuff like that. So yeah, he's a good kid. Excuse me.
And then your chicken came and you had to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Once every 4 or 5 months, I get a craving for popcorn chicken from KFC. So that was the first place I was recognized in public.
At least in Canada, they didn't run out of chicken. Did you hear what happened in the States?
No.
KFC went to a new supplier or a new shipping company for their chicken.
No.
And something screwed up, and they ran out of chicken. Colonel Sanders ran out of chicken. Like in
all across America?
I don't know if it was the entire nation or just some of its regions, but it was widespread.
Wow.
Widespread chicken outage.
Widespread chicken outage. Do you think that's more or less scary than a widespread power outage?
Oh, way more scary.
Yeah, people need their chicken.
Yeah, people need their chicken. Yeah.
Anyways, back on some hockey talk. Do you have anything else in the NHL to discuss?
Not so much in the NHL. There are a little bit of goalie stats, but that can be handled quickly. We have Vasilevsky winning the win stats with 36 games won, and we have Frederick Anderson and Hellebuck tied for next with 32 each. So things are happening as usual.
Yep.
As expected.
Yep, as expected. Yeah. Did you see the save last night that Vasilevsky made in the shootout against Montreal?
I did. I must have. I watched the shootout.
Behind the back with the glove.
Oh yeah, when he spun sideways, and
that's the second time he's done it this year.
Incredible. That was just amazing.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and that was the game-winning save because that's the goal that I think it was Houdon had to score.
He had to score. Yeah.
He had to score, and he didn't score. And Vasilevsky, and he had him. He had any other goalie beat.
He's brilliant in the shootouts.
And they interviewed Pacioretty after that in the dressing room, and Pacioretty said there is nobody in the league today who can come across that fast and do that.
Yeah, his lateral movement is unbelievable.
Now, I thought that was probably a true statement, but when you say there's nobody in the league who can do that, and one of your teammates is Carey Price, I just don't know if that's
okay. You have a great point there, and that goes back to what Pacioretty said. Apparently, I think this was announced on Satellite Hot Stove last night on CBC or Sportsnet, whatever you want to call it. I don't care anymore. He said that there's a lot of conflict in the room. He said that he wants to go to Florida, not the Panthers, but he wants to live in the state of Florida. So if he's going to get traded, trade me to Tampa Bay or the Panthers because he wants to live in Florida.
And there's a reason other than climate why that may be the case. Are you aware of the?
Is his wife from there or something?
I'm not sure one way or the other. It's taxes.
Oh, taxes.
Taxes. Living, if you're making $6 or $7 million a year, that could be $1 million or $2 million more money in your pocket if you live in Florida because of the income tax structure.
And he also said that if he doesn't get traded by Monday, if he doesn't get traded in the off season, if there's still conflict in the dressing room and still not a good plan going forward in Montreal, as far as what their plan is to grow, to win, to structure the team, then he's going to request a trade at the beginning of next season, straight like even before the season starts, as soon as training camp starts.
Who does he think he is?
I don't know.
A captain doesn't talk that way. I'm sorry.
That's why he's the worst captain in the league.
I would, if I were the management of the team, in that circumstance, I didn't hear the comment, and I'm not saying you haven't reported it accurately.
No, it's in a Sportsnet article.
Yeah, but if it was said that way, I'd have that see off his jersey so quick.
Absolutely.
I don't care if the players voted him in, and that's how you become a captain of Montreal. The players vote you in. But I would override that vote, and I'd haul the C off his jersey, and I might sit him. You just can't have that.
If you want to say that stuff to management behind closed doors, that's fine, but don't say that to reporters, because it's just going to turn into this, where we bad talk them for a good reason. I mean, you shouldn't be saying that stuff, but yeah, crazy.
And we have been less than content with Pacioretty for a while. You've spoken about it more eloquently than me, or than I have, but he is not showing energy, and he hasn't really all season.
No, he's lazy.
When he doesn't have the puck and it's time for him to go on a change, he holds his stick up in the air and he glides back to the bench, and he's not the only guy who does it. Alexander Ovechkin does it too, and we just talked about him and how great he was. But A captain doesn't do that. He just not in my team. If I was running a team,
that's right. Yeah. Jamie Benn's getting some heat for that as well. Apparently, recently.
Oh yeah.
He's been pretty lazy and lackluster on the ice. I'm just reading here on Twitter that Kovalchuk is eyeing a July return to the NHL. Very interesting to see what team he goes to or what team's interested in him. In my opinion, he shouldn't even be allowed back in the NHL because he made the decision to leave and break that huge contract and put New Jersey in a stupid situation. Shouldn't even be allowed back in the league.
I would tend to agree. Or make him play in Atlanta.
Make him play in Atlanta?
Yeah, make him play in Atlanta. That's where this whole story started, right?
Sure.
Make him play there.
Crazy. What else you got?
I have mostly Olympic talk now, so.
Segue time?
Segue time.
All right.
Da-da-da.
What game do you want to talk about first?
First, I want to go back about 2 months where we talked about Team Canada when they were putting the roster together. And we've had a few videos, and I think in at least one other podcast where we talked about Team Canada and what our expectations were, and they weren't much. In fact, we were criticized in the comments for the expectations. I think you or I or both of us had said that we didn't really expect that they would win any games, let alone go into medal territory. And someone wrote, and probably quite rightly, come on now, you can't say Canada, wouldn't win any games. They're still bringing a lot of talent, and every other team there is suffering under the same restriction of no NHL players as we are, so get a grip. And they're probably correct. But all that in context, I'm so pleased that Team Canada, René Bourque and Max Lapierre and those guys were able to come home with a medal. And I think that's fabulous in the men's side. And I think the women, we already had a show about the women. I think the women have nothing to be ashamed of either. The Americans clearly had the better team, and Team Canada skated their butts off, both men and women, and worked as hard as they could and got what they got, and they deserved exactly what they got, and good for them.
I completely agree. Yeah, well said. It's a bronze, but it's still a medal. They still played hard. They still came together as a group. They still made a ton of great connections over there. Just a wonderful experience for the team in general.
Just fantastic. And every single one of these players would never have made it into the Olympics to even compete if the NHL hadn't decided to not participate. So none of them would have been Olympians. They would have just toiled away in the DEL or the SHL or wherever. And here they were all coming together and doing an amazing thing.
I want to give credit to the coaching staff as well.
Oh, yeah.
Because
that was great.
They play such a crucial role, especially when you're bringing together a team that really doesn't have a lot of experience playing with each other. And I know that some of the guys do because they played in the Spengler Cup. But really, you don't have a lot of time to bring that team together and make it happen. Kind of like what Vegas did this year. Gerard Gallant did a lot of coaching to make that team happen. And the Canadian coaching staff did the same thing this year with them. So we're still very proud of them. Obviously, I'm disappointed that the NHL players weren't there. But they did better than I thought they would. But I knew that they weren't. I didn't know that they weren't going to win gold, but I had a good feeling about that. I got an interesting tweet about that. After game, they won the first game against someone. I don't even know who it was. Slovenia or someone like that. I don't even know. And I got a tweet from a guy. And he said, weren't you the channel that predicted that Canada wouldn't win gold? And they called me, or he said, what did he say? Why don't you go complain that the NHL players aren't there? And they called me a crybaby Crosby or something like that. And then he went on to talk about René Bourque and how elite he was and stuff. And then he said that, see, we don't need you white men anymore. And he said that he didn't identify as Canadian because he lived in Alberta, but he didn't identify as Canadian because he's Native American and he doesn't need the white man. And then he just went on and on. It's just like brought race into it and stuff. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, what? Anyways, it was just ridiculous. I blocked him because it's not going to engage in that conversation.
Was it on Twitter? Or?
Yeah, it's on Twitter. Yeah. Basically making me feel bad because of what his culture has gone through and stuff. Like, I don't have nothing to do with that. Like, I'm talking hockey. Get a grip, bud. Anyway.
Yeah, it's...
I don't want to talk about politics on here, but...
No, yeah, but really there's a lot of extra things happening for a lot of people right now, and it's hard for them to separate sports from culture, from all these other things. It's some people are struggling. So
some people are struggling. Yep.
That's too bad.
Can we talk a little bit about the game that happened last night?
Well, we have to.
Okay, good.
But before we even do that, just back to the bronze medal game. In doing that, Canada played the Czechs, and the Czechs had beaten Canada.
Yes, they have.
In the round robin. I think it was in a shootout or overtime or whatever. But so, the Canada wasn't maybe the favorite going into that bronze medal game, but they won fairly decisively, although the Czechs made a game of it in the third period and ended up being a 2-goal spread. But I think... and I want to agree with you, Willie Desjardins, Dave King, and Sean Burke, who really was the mind behind putting the team together, did a fabulous job.
Oh, yes, they did.
Fabulous job. So good for Team Canada. They were, you could see they were genuinely happy to get the bronze. And I think that's the distinction between winning bronze and winning silver in these kinds of tournaments. The women wanted gold and lost, so they got silver. The men wanted bronze and won to get the bronze. And that's such a different feeling.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you're getting the third place instead of second place, but the sense of accomplishment is there at least, and not in the silver.
And, when you think sometimes that the two teams that didn't make it into the final end up playing for bronze and they really don't care, they care.
Yeah.
They care a lot, especially in the Olympics.
Yeah, you got to win to get bronze and you got to lose to get silver. So it's...
Yeah, so that's a little different. And maybe they could structure the tournament differently. Maybe the two teams, I don't know how they could do it, but, if they could have a different, they have page playoffs and other things in curling, not in the Olympics, but elsewhere. It would be neat to have it set up so that you played and won to get your medal, not just lost. But I don't know how you do it.
How would you feel about a gold medal matchup of a best of 5? First team to win 3 games.
Well...
Or best of 3.
It would probably be fairer and be less luck-based or officiating-based or something like that. However, after watching 5-game series and 7-game series in the NHL all my life, it's sometimes refreshing to see the whole thing decided in one darn game, just like the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I agree.
And why not just one game? That one game is still 60 minutes long. A lot can happen in that one game, and you get ready for it, and away you go. So I'm okay with it.
I'm just glad that that final game didn't end in a shootout like the women's one did.
That would have been just awful.
That was
awful.
I shut it off. I said that in the video. I shut the game off after the overtime because I just didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
Turning an team sport into an individual sport.
So now to the final game.
Yes.
Which you introduced 7 minutes ago, and I interrupted you. But that was amazing.
Well, I think I made the segue at about 4 minutes in. I was so excited to talk about it.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable because Germany, like, admittedly, I didn't watch all the game. I tuned in with 16 minutes left in the third period.
Oh.
It was 1-1. And then Russia scored with like 6 minutes left or something like that. And I was like, oh no, because I was cheering hard for Germany.
And then 10 seconds later.
It was unbelievable. It was like a movie. And then Germany scored again with like 3 minutes left. I was like, there's no way that Russia can, like, there's Germany.
Germany's ahead 3-2. There's less than 3 minutes to go.
They're going to shut them down.
They're going to shut them down. And then with 2 minutes and 2 seconds to go or something like that, Russia takes a penalty.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Germany takes a penalty.
No, Russia takes a penalty.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
And this is in the bag. They've got a power play for almost the entire remainder of the third period, and you're up by a goal.
Yeah, that's like you couldn't have written in any more perfect scenario.
And then
they pull the goalie to make it 5-on-5, keep possession in the zone, and score.
Russia scores with half a second left. 0.5 seconds. Russia scores and ties it at 3-3.
Frustrating. Very frustrating. But exciting.
So exciting.
Yeah.
So exciting.
Couldn't believe it. And it was just, like, I wanted Germany to win. But the way that the game happened, it was a pretty special event to watch.
Oh, really? Yeah, I was hoping for Germany as well. But Russia went through a lot of adversity, just as a team, if you want to even call it Russia. Probably shouldn't, because of this whole change status they had. Olympic athletes from Russia, the OAR.
They've gotten 3 gold medals. The first was the USSR or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
The second one was like the Union of Russia or whatever it was called. And they didn't enter as Russia. They entered as the Union of Russia. Whatever.
Oh, they were the Commonwealth of Independent States.
Something like that.
The CIS.
This time they're the OAR. They've never won the gold medal as represented as Russia.
Is that right?
Of the 3 times. It's crazy.
Yeah.
One thing that I will say, even though I was cheering for Germany, I was happy for the Russian players, and they did something very respectful. And one of the first things they did after they won, after they did their little celebration, was go over and congratulate and speak with the German coaches, the coaching staff, and really give them credit for all that they did with their team. I thought that was a really classy move. So good on the Russians for doing that. And I really just feel bad for Ovechkin because he wanted to go so bad and win gold, and he had to watch his country basically win gold without him. So it's tough. It's tough.
It is tough, and it's business. It's so much business and money, and not heart. Excuse me. Another cool thing that happened, and I didn't see it right after the game because it didn't happen right after the game, but I was watching on CBC the coverage, live to tape. I watched a PVR'd version because I couldn't stay up that late. I could, but I wouldn't have been much good. So I watched it, and the coverage cut away from the game almost immediately, as soon as the game ended, because they had to go to bobsledding or basket weaving or some other thing.
Basket weaving.
Or long darts or whatever they're covering. Anyway, they came back just with a snip of in the rink video several minutes after the game had ended, maybe 15 minutes afterwards. They were still putting the carpets out and getting ready to hand the medals out. Or no, the medals had already been handed out by this point because they had them around their necks, which I didn't see. But Kovalchuk and Datsuk posed for photographs with each of the German players. So they would stand over by the boards, and a German player would go in between them, put his arms around the 2 Russian guys, and they'd take a picture. And then he'd skate away, and another German guy would come up, and he'd get his picture taken, because this was history. And even though they'd just been beaten for the gold medal in the Olympics, they were going over to these 2 gods of hockey, Datsuk and Kovalchuk, and wanting their picture taken with these guys.
Yeah.
I thought that was just fantastic, that the Germans would have enough spirit and gratitude for playing in that game and getting it set in their heads that, okay, silver's all right. We just got beaten by Russians, for the silver. And then also by Datsuk and Kovalchuk, and probably other Russian players as well, that were spending time with the Germans on the ice and celebrating the moment. And I thought that was just fabulous, and it's all that's good about hockey and sports.
Yeah, exactly. Very, very classy move.
Super.
And as the fatherland versus the motherland, I guess, does Germany still identify as the fatherland?
No,
have they ever?
Well, I don't think they have since about May 8th, 1945, hopefully. But
anyway,
let's not go there.
Okay. It was good, and there's so much politics and stuff, especially with Russia these days. It's cool to see 2 countries kind of come together like that through a sport on the ice, and just appreciate the other side of the team and the guy on the ice.
Yeah, and it's 2 countries that have a very difficult history politically.
Yes, that's what I was.
Yeah, like in 1939 when Germany went into Poland and started the European part of World War II.
Yeah,
they had a deal with the Russians. They had a pact. Then the Russians actually went into Poland from the other side, and they met in the middle and shook hands, at least for a while. And then later on, Germany broke the deal and went into Russia, going for the oil fields in the Caucasus, because they needed the energy to fund their war machine, or to supply their war machine. And then things broke down, and it got very grim after that. Wars are terrible things. But thankfully now, with sport and other cultural exchanges and things, we can see that we're all the same folks, and forget the politics, and get out in the ice, and you're all good.
Wasn't it Russia who took down Hitler eventually?
Well, they were the first army into Berlin. Hitler took down himself.
No, but I mean, like they were the first to get to him.
It was a desperate race to get into Berlin.
Yeah.
The Americans were trying hard, and the British from the west, and the Russians were coming in from the east, and the Russians got there first, and that was the end of that. And the the truce was signed. Germany surrendered on May the 8th. And a lot of Germans were headed west to try to get inside the American, British, and French lines so the Russians wouldn't catch them, because the Russians were very angry about what the Germans had done in Russia.
And no doubt.
And as you can imagine, millions and millions and millions of people, villages burned to the ground. And again, the individual soldiers involved here, they're just acting on orders. And the higher up you go, that's where you find the bad guys. And war is a bad deal. And hopefully sport is an alternative to war, right?
Yeah, you're right.
We compete. We cheer for a country. You go out, you do battle, quote unquote, and then you shake hands after it's over and you're done.
Definitely.
And I think in many ways, sports has become an outlet, an ineffective outlet, because we still have wars, unfortunately. But sports has become an outlet for that competitive spirit that you have when you try to measure yourself up against other countries.
Or a space race.
Or the space race, or anything.
Because eventually the Russians and the Americans and everyone came together to create the International Space Station. Obviously there's still some political differences between America and Russia, as we all know, but the International Space Station plays a very crucial role in bringing the two countries together, because a lot of U.S. merchandise gets launched from Kazakhstan on a regular basis.
Oh yeah, especially since the shuttle program closed up. And you can say, well, now Russia's not really a communist country anymore and it's easier to do business with them and all of that, but this actually happened when Russia still was a communist country back in the 1970s, and we're only talking a couple of years after the race to the moon was finished and the Americans got there first. They had Apollo-Soyuz missions where they built a docking port so that an Apollo capsule and a Soyuz could dock together in space and have a meet-up.
Yeah, I remember seeing the video of that. Yeah. I think they were shaking hands or something.
Oh, yeah, shaking hands and hanging out for a couple of days together, and then they would de-dock or undock, and then they would go back to Earth.
It's cool to see the science minds come together within both country to, I think they understand what's really important moving forward in the world.
Well, in space in particular, because you get up into orbit and you look down at the Earth and you can't see borders anymore. You can't see politicians. You can't see the flow of money, and you can't see poverty. You can see brown and green, and you can easily tell the difference between Haiti and the Dominican Republic that share that island. And Haiti has a lot more difficulty socially than Dominican Republic does, and you can see that from space. But when you're in space, the Earth is just one big marble.
That's right.
And everybody's the same.
Brings things into perspective, for sure.
Sure does.
I just got some news on Twitter here. Not a very good segue, and not very good news at all. It's being reported that, maybe this is old news, I'm not sure, but this is the first I'm reading of it. Jordan Stahl's infant daughter just passed away. I don't know how or why or what from, but...
Oh, wow, I'm seeing that here, too.
That's tough. Usually CBC isn't the type of outlet to break news like that first, but that's the first I'm hearing of it. I'm not sure what happened, but... Yeah,
apparently she died yesterday.
That's a very tough... it's a very tough thing for him to go through. And still continue to keep his mind on hockey. I hope for his sake he takes some time away from the game.
He's already taken the weekend games, he wasn't in the roster on the last two games because she must have been ill.
Very unfortunate. I am confident that the organization will allow him to take as much time as he needs, and obviously do anything financially they can for the family or any family going through the same thing. And hockey is really good that way.
Hockey is...
Like the whole hockey fights cancer, hockey is for everyone. It is really true that people don't just care about the game, they care about each other. They care about important things in life and illnesses and stuff. A lot of the hockey wives do charities and fundraisers and phone call stuff, and they do a lot behind the scenes that people don't know about. So that's one of the things I love about hockey.
Yeah. Well, very good. Hope that they find peace. Back to the Olympics, can we? Just for a moment. I think the team or the country that won the most Olympic medals was Norway, which isn't unusual. Norway is just such
very
a dominating cross-country skiing, speed skating, long-track speed skating in particular. And I heard an interesting stat this past week talking about Norway's unbelievable medal haul. Norway has about 5.5 million people in the entire country. And Norway, of course, hugs the coast of Scandinavia there in the North Sea. With 5.5 million people, they turn out a tremendous amount of very high-level athletes in a lot of different sports. Canada has 35 million people.
Mm-hmm.
And we're a winter country as well, at least with several months of the year. And even in Vancouver, they got, I think, 20 centimeters in Vancouver over the weekend. So that'll shut that place down for days.
Yeah.
But in Canada, we have, I'll just ask you to tell me, how many Olympic-size long track speed skating ovals do we have in Canada?
Olympic size?
Olympic size for 35 million people.
5?
3.
3?
3.
Jeez.
Norway, with 5.5 million people, has how many?
10?
72.
72. Taking it a little seriously. Yeah, that's good though.
Is it a surprise that Norway wins so many speed skating medals? 72.
And you're seeing, like, Canada's always dominated hockey and stuff, but you're seeing the Canada programs really come to life in bobsledding and stuff like that. They're really putting focus on some of those secondary sports to hockey. So that's good to see. And it's good to see that countries like Norway focus on those sports like that. It's really important. It makes the Olympics what they are. So, and it's funny that Canada has, I think we have got more medals this year than the previous 2 Olympics, but we haven't dominated in hockey and we haven't dominated in curling like expected. Yeah,
those should be guaranteed medals in those sports, that especially curling. We did get 1 curling gold, which was mixed doubles, which was very well done. But the men and the women both struggled. And I'm not sure if we use the right method to pick teams for curling. Like, we have these massive tournaments, and I don't know if by the time we send the team to the Olympics, they're still the best team. Like, the tournament they won to become that team was months and months ago. And curling can be very streaky.
I don't follow curling at all because I honestly despise the sport. But I've heard lots of controversy about the decisions that they made to send who they did. So it's become a bit of a dramatic sport based on that, at least in Canada. I don't know how other countries do it, but
I think you could safely say that there are probably 8, or at least half a dozen, but maybe as many as 8 women's or men's curling teams that on a given week can win the best trophy in the world. But when they play each other in cash spiels, and the women play the Scotties Tournament of Hearts, and the men play in the Brier. Well, the Olympics happen before the Brier champion is chosen each year. The Brier is usually in, like, March. And so the Olympic champion is really last year's champion, or got there, or the Olympic team is either last year's champion or got there because of a tournament that happened several months ago. Meanwhile, in Canada, while they're still playing, knowing that they're going to the Olympics, they may be going through a period of advanced suckitude at that time.
That's true.
And other teams are just cleaning them up. And then these other teams that are playing really well, they don't get to go to the Olympics. The team that they just tromped went and then ends up losing. So now, usually we do well in even with that choosing system, we still do well, because even when Canada sends a team that would only be 5th or 6th on a given week, we have been in the past good enough to show up and get her done. But the other countries, especially Asia, in the women's curling, Sweden won, but the South Koreans came 2nd, and Japanese women came 3rd. That's amazing.
It is amazing.
Do you know about the South Korean team's connection to Canada?
I do not.
Do you know about the South Korean team's connection to Prince Edward Island?
I do not.
Their coach is from PEI.
Really?
Yep.
Interesting. I've got a funny story for you.
And his last name is Gallant.
No, that doesn't surprise me. That's a great segue into... it's not really a segue. I'm not going to talk about it. There's a conversation I had the other night on Discord with some Patreon people about last names and stuff, genealogy. We had one of our Patreon members is traveling down to Atlanta, I think that's where he said he's going. And he came across a U-Haul thing. And on the U-Haul thing, there's a picture of Anne of Green Gables that said Prince Edward Island on it, all the way down there.
Really?
I thought that was really interesting.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah, it's cool. Huh. Yeah, anyways, do you have anything else to add to this podcast?
Just the soccer talk.
All right, hit me with it.
All right. Today, some people call today Super Sunday. Some of the bigger matchups in the Barclays English Premier League are held on this day. And today's game was between, or the one I watched anyway, was between Manchester United and Chelsea. Manchester United is in second place in the league standings. A distant second. Manchester City is running away with it all. But United was playing Chelsea. And if Chelsea had won the game, and even if they had tied the game, United would not have even been in second place because they had temporarily been passed for second place. And they had to win today in order to get back into second place. In soccer, when you win, you get 3 points. When you tie, you just get 1. And that's how it ends. So a tie game, actually, there's 1 point less awarded than a win to both teams. So there's a history between the coach of Manchester United, Jose Mourinho, and the coach of Chelsea, Antonio Conte. And these two coaches do not like each other. Mourinho's from Portugal and Conte's from Italy, but neither one of them's from England. But they have a history, and it's not a good history, of trash-talking each other. Mourinho in particular, he likes to say things that get the other coaches riled up. So he said, he said things over the years. But most recently, he was interviewed like a year or so ago and said, you seem to be very quiet when you're standing on the sideline. And in soccer, coaches stand right on the sideline. They're not behind the players on a bench somewhere. They're right out at the edge of the field, right on the touchline, as they call it.
Kind of like basketball.
Kind of like basketball, and they have a box they have to stand in. And the box is described by some white lines. And it's near midfield. So the opposing coach, the guy you hate, if you hate him, is standing literally feet from you in his box. And you're standing side by side right on the edge of the pitch. And apparently, in the past, Manchester United had played Chelsea last year, and Chelsea had beat them at home 4-0. And Conte, the Italian-born coach of Chelsea, was going quite crazy, even with the third and the fourth goal. And you would know from NHL, like if one team is beating another team 9-0, when they score the 10th goal, you're not supposed to celebrate.
That's right.
You just score the goal and you skate away. We've done this before. We don't want to embarrass the other team.
Act like you've done it before.
Act like you've done it before. Well, in football, soccer, that same principle is supposed to apply, but it applies when the score might only be 3-0 or 4-0, because that's the equivalent of a 10-0 game in hockey. Because soccer, you don't score as much.
Exactly.
So when you've gone ahead and scored 4-0, you don't jump around on the sidelines like an idiot. So they asked Mourinho, that you seem to be awfully subdued and reserved. He said, well, I don't want to act like a clown. And Conte figured that he was referring to him. Now Mourinho didn't say Conte's name, but Conte figured, you're referring to me because I'm emotional on the sidelines. Well, maybe I'm not a clown, or maybe I am a clown, but at least I'm not senile.
Oh. At
least I'm not senile or have dementia, because, some people who might call other people a clown used to be clowns themselves back in the day, And Mourinho says, I might have done stuff in the past, but I never fixed any games.
Oh.
And what that referred to was back when Conte coached Juventus, he was charged by FIFA, the soccer organization, with fixing games when he'd coached his earlier team, which was Siena.
Wow.
And he was eventually acquitted of doing that, but he served a 10-game or several-game suspension, and several years later took it to court and won. So he never, legally speaking, he was never found to have fixed any games.
Right.
But that didn't stop Jose Mourinho from saying, well, at least I didn't fix any games.
Yeah.
So then Conte says, if you want to settle this, we can go in a room. And now that's the equivalent of what you'd say in Canada. If you want to settle something, take it outside.
Yeah.
Apparently over there, you take it inside. You take it in a room. But anyway, that's where the state of play was between these two guys when Chelsea and Manchester go and take the field today. And because you'd only play the other team twice a year.
Right.
And they hadn't played Chelsea for a long time. And a lot of this stuff happened since the last time they played each other. So here they are today in Manchester at Trafford Field, or Old Trafford they call it. Chelsea scored first and was up 1-0, and that could have been it. Manchester scored and tied it, and then Manchester scored and went ahead 2-1. And then the talk was, what's going to happen? Because usually when the game is over, the coaches walk towards each other and shake hands. At the beginning of the game, there's usually a handshake as well. And in the beginning of the game, Mourinho for Manchester went and greeted all of the Chelsea players, hugged a couple of them, shook hands with them all, and then the coaches, he eventually went over to Conte and almost made him shake his hand. But they didn't even look at each other. So when the game ended, of course, Mourinho won. So he's obviously pumped, but he's being very cool about it. And he walks over to Conte. They do shake hands. It's very quick. It's very abrupt, but it's no, it didn't break out.
No fisticuffs. Oh.
But being a Manchester United fan as I am, I was so hoping that, even though I think when you look at the two guys, I don't like Conte at all, and I'm not a big fan of Mourinho either, frankly. I'm an Alex Ferguson guy. He used to be the manager, and that's what, the manager's really the right name to call them. I'm calling them coaches, but that's how we relate to that. And I was really hoping Manchester would win, but Mourinho is a bit of a he's a bit of a tool when it comes to these kinds of things, but it was a lot of fun to watch that and know about the drama that's behind it, and then see it play out live on TV was great. Yeah, so I liked it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Soccer drama.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
All right.
There's got to be more, but that's all I got.
This brings a conclusion to the podcast. We are a little over an hour, so goal accomplished. I'm
off to watch NASCAR in Atlanta after the big Daytona 500.
I'm off to edit about 3,000 videos.
Right on.
Thanks, guys, for listening on iTunes or Google Play or any podcatcher app you use, or watching on YouTube. I'm not really sure how many people watch versus listen, but I appreciate you guys making it this far regardless. We're going to skip the fishbowl today due to time reasons. I have so much to edit. I just want to wrap this up.
But we are going to do a podcast for the other channel.
That's right.
Post to Post, where we talk general things, not
talk about
things.
Life, talk about science, talk about whatever, just answer questions.
So if you're really missing the fishbowl because you were looking for us to answer a question, stay tuned.
If you like the bonus podcast we did last week, it's basically going to be exactly like that.
Yeah.
It's going to be called Having a Yak, and it's going to be held on our second channel, More Post to Post. I'm not entirely sure when the next one is going to release, but hopefully pretty soon, because we have a lot of questions to answer, a lot of things to talk about, a lot of laughs to have.
Cool.
Okay. All right. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Love you guys. Subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Like the podcast if you like the video on YouTube if you like the podcast. And I'll see you guys next week for podcast 38. 38. All right. Adios.